Hey there, welcome to episode 113 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, a Nevada nonprofit 501c3 public charity. Today we are going to speak about our meetups. The title of today's episode, recorded at about 1 p.m. on April 14, 2025. Yes, that's Monday. We publish on Tuesdays. Who knows, perhaps getting ahead of schedule could be a thing. So season 2, episode 113, we're moving right along. If you're not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, we are, as I mentioned, a Nevada nonprofit, 501c3 public charity. We were refounded, I suppose you could say, in January of 2022, coming up on 3 years since our incorporation in June of 2022 as a Nevada nonprofit, and we are a 501c3 public charity since retroactively June of 2022. We are coming up on 3 years, and so many exciting things up ahead. What we try to do is reach out to people and talk about what we're trying to accomplish. Our purpose statement, which is on file with the IRS and with the state and with anybody else who asks, is to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. Along the way, we've realized that we don't necessarily have to be in Vegas to innovate for Vegas. So we spend some of our time reaching out to those beyond the formal borders of Greater Vegas, wherever those actually are. So we often invite people from other places to work on what we are trying to accomplish and vice versa. And this way we can leverage, we can make the most of civic volunteer, in fact, time, effort, and expertise beyond just our locality and the people we have available as we regrow and reboot and re-envision and rebuild all the everything. This organization and the civic volunteer movement as it takes place here in the Vegas area. At the same time, we can engage some of our approximately 40 million annual visitors here to visit and enjoy the fun economy. So why not let them try out our Smarter Smart City, our various community elevating initiatives as they might apply to people visiting. And then when they go home, they might find a civic volunteer organization near them that they can say, hey, how come we aren't a smart city like Vegas? And the response could be, well, we're working with Vegas and we're all in this together. Hopefully, wherever you've found this audio program, you are able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, a summary of today's episode, which I will read to you, and the usual 4 links that I will whip through as quickly as possible. If you've heard these episodes before, they're the same 4 links. The summary of today's episode, we have at least 2 virtual meetups each week, barring schedule conflicts or respites. That's horrible pronunciation. I should be fired immediately. And some might be wondering what these are all about. Respite. I prefer respite. What these are all about. So a quick rundown on what these are for and why they are split between 2 different meetups. And what about hackathons anyway? The links for today's episode, as often is the case, these 4. Our homepage, innovateforvegas.org, F-O-R spelled out, Innovate for Vegas, no punctuation. innovateforvegas.org. On our homepage, you will find our gatherings calendar, which has our meetups on it. So if you ever want to find out when our meetups are, and that would include hackathons if we bring those back, and our board meetings, I think our next one is in May. You can wander over to our homepage, and there you will find a calendar with descriptions for the events recurring. Our meetups don't require RSVPs. You don't have to sign up. You can just join in and be a part of the conversation. Although it'll probably be more useful for you to be somewhat aware of what our initiatives are if you attend the initiative meetup, which is what we're going to talk about today. The projectact.info homepage, project-act, that's ACT, .info. ACT is our project our initiative now that we commenced in October of 2022. It is the Autonomous Cohort Transformation Initiative, which we started to pursue in order to help other cohorts of individuals and small groups transform, if they were a brigade or maybe they're just a group of people interested, to transform into a standalone, independent civic volunteer organization, maybe a nonprofit, and maybe even pursue a 501c3 determination, and so on. We then, on the sunsetting of Code for America's Brigade program, headed in a slightly different direction at the same time. So still transformation, but also autonomous cohort tessellation. A tessellation is a mosaic, and each tile in our mosaic is an organization, a cohort, and some of the projects or initiatives that they are working on. The whole goal of Project ACT is to, on the tessellation side, is to make cohorts discoverable and to encourage connection, communication, and collaboration between cohorts, regardless of where they are. As I often say, you do not need to be in Vegas to innovate for Vegas. Agileforvolunteers.org. It's agile, A-G-I-L-E, for F-O-R, volunteers, .org. It's our take on the agile methodology, which was developed by and for software engineers, but we apply it to volunteers rather than full-time paid engineers, and not only for software, but for anything volunteers can work for, especially civic volunteers. So user stories and tasks and initiatives and a whole team and all the good stuff. No stand-up meetings. Nobody likes those. And we have a different take on story points. Story points are a bad idea. Everybody agrees on that. So agileforvolunteers.org. We are developing it internally, and then we'll start publishing for others to take advantage of and put to use and hopefully add in their own improvements. And we can make it easier for volunteers to work together to make the most of volunteer time, effort, and expertise. Finally, Mastodon for Vegas. I always mention this. Coming soon. Mastodon.vegas. It will be a geographically oriented Mastodon server as part of our MyMuni and Welcome information sharing platform. So we'll embrace ActivityPub, the Fediverse, and information sharing in general. So eventually we'll launch a Mastodon.vegas server as part of that. I like to keep the word out there. So let's get started with meetups in real life. Our origin story. When we first rebooted our organization back in January of 2022 or so, technically we started rebooting it then. I think our first hackathon was in March. It was Open Transit. It's still my favorite project, although they're all my favorites. Now the Open Transit Initiative. We started off having a monthly hackathon meetup with hopes to instill the notion that a monthly hackathon was a reasonable goal. At the same time, we had a monthly in-person meetup. So our hackathon was also in person, but it was at the Innovation Center in downtown Las Vegas in the Innovation District. Do you see a naming pattern here? We would also have an in-person meetup at Tech Alley, a monthly event here in Vegas that attracts some fraction of the people in Greater Vegas that might have the mindset to participate in what we're trying to accomplish, civic volunteerism, community elevation. This was likely an incorrect assumption. Our finale at Tech Alley did not actually excite people about getting stuff working. We were sort of intended to be a show and tell. Like, hey, here's how we're progressing along with our Open Transit initiative or our Open Data Capture Platform initiative, etc. But if people don't participate, then we don't really make progress, so there's really not much to show and tell. So we converted it to rally at Tech Alley to try to excite people about what we were trying or hoping to accomplish. We attracted people who were interested but who they were not really committed. They treated this gathering as the only participation in which they were interested. They were actually interested. So, hey, yeah, I'll come and see what you guys are up to. Hey, yeah, that looks really cool. Okay, or we have a hackathon every month. Oh, no, I'm not coming to that. So they were interested in sitting in a room and hearing about things but not doing anything. So that becomes a challenge. Meetups in real life need a venue, some planning, and it turns out people are more interested in their own benefit, like free food. That's a common one. Is there free food? Unless they are familiar with the notion of civic volunteer effort. So moving to virtual meetups makes more sense until we become reestablished in the Greater Vegas area. And even then, in-person meetups would shy away from our focus on not only local participation, but with engaging with other cohorts, one or more people each, out in the rest of the world. So we are trying to reach out beyond our local geography. So having local events becomes I use this word casually but discriminatorily. If you're not here in Vegas, then you can't participate in the in-person events, even though we want you to participate in what we're trying to accomplish and vice versa. So virtual meetups do tend to take that into account. So office hours, the origin story. The office hours idea, by the way, office hours, not an original idea, obviously. But the office hours idea for Innovate for Vegas Foundation sprung up in a discussion with some other organizations regarding the expense of a Zoom subscription to facilitate online meetups. I suggested that an online meetup using an open source platform such as Jitsi, Jitsi, which is free and fairly capable, could be done in 5 minutes, which I proceeded to do. Completely free, up and running, cross-platform, works in your browser. They have a mobile application, open source, no subscriptions, no real constraints. Thus, we commenced a weekly meetup ourselves, which did draw in 1 or 2 people each week, but which sort of ran out of steam. This is mostly an issue of getting the word out, or discovery as I like to call it, but there was a certain activation energy to reach. Certainly those who are familiar with civic volunteer organizations are either in or out fairly early on. Then it is a question of getting some time commitment from someone to participate in a discussion for some short period of time. The office hours, by the way, are not intended to be a weekly meeting for you to come to. You can. They're really intended to address questions, answer questions, to address concerns, to perhaps, we'll get into this in a moment. The world has been not so accommodating over the last several months, so there's always a distraction, to say the least. We also had our monthly board meetings during our office hours, such that anyone could sit in and listen to the board meeting and also interact in the I wrote context, in the context of office hours. So by overlapping office hours and our board meeting, the whole notion was you could come to the office hours, you could listen in on the board meeting, you could also ask a question. We don't bite. And then once the board meeting was over, obviously you could freeform discuss or ask questions on anything. During the board meeting, of course, questions and participation would be on the record. We don't record our board meetings, but they would be part of the minutes, etc. So it's up to the person who's attending. Any particular questions or proposals or anything. So we're always open to the public. Yes, we would close a board meeting if there were private or sensitive information to discuss. That's not a problem. We've never really had to do that, so not a big deal. So the office hours themselves, what's the purview? The office hours have essentially evolved into a forum for discussion. We discuss our organization itself, our plans, and our goals, and so on, from a high level, non-technical and non-initiative oriented approach, basically. So the idea is to keep that discussion for Mondays. We can talk about the notion of open data capture platform and what does that really mean. We're not going to talk about implementation details. We're not going to talk about user stories. My mouth is getting dry, sorry. It's getting hot. The summer in Vegas is here, even though it's only spring. Anyone interested or curious in what we are doing can join in and find out from a high level. They can ask questions or just listen to what we're talking about or whatever, no pressure. In some cases, there may be a nascent cohort coming together, or maybe someone aspiring to drive such an effort, and they would like to have a conversation with other cohorts about how they are doing what they are doing. By the way, I've done this. I attended if you go on meetup.com, or it's probably the best way now. Sometimes people use Eventbrite, but essentially you just have to sort of hunt around. If an organization has a website, sometimes they will link to their meetup. It would be nice to actually have a sort of a show and tell meetup, at least monthly, that isn't so much that's why we split our Monday initiative meetup and our Tuesday office hours. So office hours are supposed to be for people to join in, have a conversation, and they can also participate in our initiative meetup, but the initiative meetup is more hands-on, so to speak. So office hours are a place where people can come and talk about if they want to form a cohort, or if they have a cohort and they want to form a nonprofit entity, or they want to pursue 501c3 status or talk about fiscal sponsorship, not as attorneys, not as tax professionals with offering any advice, but more of a pointers on where to look and what we've experienced along our journey. So conversation, not authoritative advice, definitely. Not yet anyway. Who knows where this could lead. So we have weekly no RSVP required meetups. Come on down and we can talk about what you're trying to accomplish or what you are accomplishing. That would be cool. I would like to hear about those stories. Simply showing up, especially with a proactive mind to join in the conversation, is what works, and that's what we hope for. It is easy to go off topic without a formal agenda. So unlike the board meeting, which would have an agenda, which those are still, well, I'll get to this in just a moment. The board meeting has a formal agenda. The office hours do not, other than trying to keep it generalized and not talk about specific or technical things. Those are for Mondays, initiative meetup. And this does happen. We do go off topic, but the focus of office hours is what we are doing and how we are doing it. What you are doing and how you are doing it, and maybe ways that we could collaborate so that we could be doing it, including getting new cohorts up and running, so to speak. I will say that we used to have our board meeting every month, third Thursday. So we had our office hours every week on Thursday. So they overlapped. Now we've moved our office hours to Tuesdays. As I'm speaking today, they could move again. That's why you should always check our calendar. You can even subscribe to our calendar. Then you'll always know on your own calendar. So the office hours have moved to Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're in Eastern, then it's 9 p.m. And we've talked about adjusting that a little bit. 9 p.m. seems to be okay on the East Coast. We would be open to moving it slightly earlier, or we'll figure that out. Communication is more important than time on the clock. So we moved it to Tuesday, so that way Monday and Tuesdays we're done with our meetups and we can focus on work. That's not to say that there can't be other meetups, but our weekly meetups are now Mondays and Tuesdays. Speaking of Monday, the initiative meetup, eventually it will be useful to have regular virtual gatherings. These would be around actual initiatives and their component projects. So like actual project meetups. And these are fairly common. And these are the things that often are advertised on meetup.com or Eventbrite or similar. So if you're a newcomer, it almost feels like you're interrupting something. I have gone to organization gatherings that are essentially project meetings. And it's sort of weird, like, hey, I just want to insert myself into your conversation and talk about some ideas. And so we essentially enable that on our office hours. Come on down and talk about pretty much anything. And then if you want to talk about actual projects that we're working on, we separate it onto Monday. So that's why they're split. So we've established a separate forum for discussion that's a little bit more focused. Office hours for structural discussion, like the structure of our organization or your organization or how we can work together. Initiative meetups for what in our case would be Agile for Volunteers workflow conversations, like developing features and user stories, discussing implementation tasks, defects, creating new component projects, maybe even starting whole new initiatives, and so on and so on. One hill we need to jump over eventually is the fact that a single initiative meetup is not practical for those with schedule conflicts, so that as initiative and component project teams form and they collaborate on forward progress, as the number of initiatives that we have running in parallel may increase, the teams should meet when and how they want to, so it works for them. So we shouldn't all feel that we're in lockstep. We have to meet on Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific time. That's just not how volunteer time works. This requires some self-starter participation, obviously. There can't be we just meet at the same time. No, meet when it's good for you. You don't require everyone to join in your meeting. This, by the way, is also something of a job skill or a life skill. To be able to coordinate collaboration with others, you don't need to ask permission other than the people that you're trying to coordinate a time that works. So if someone who's leading or participating in a team of like 2, 3, 4 people, 5 people, who knows? And you say, does Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific time work for you? And then they say, well, maybe Thursdays, maybe Tuesdays, maybe Wednesday, maybe every other Wednesday, whatever it is. If it works for you and your team, the people that you're trying to collaborate with, great. You don't have to feel that you're stuck with Monday. So Monday is kind of a line in the sand. This requires, I lost my place. So this requires some self-starter participation, as I said. So obviously, that's a good thing to have or to learn or to develop. But having one meeting at a time for all initiatives is just not realistic, as in one grand meeting. Breakout rooms are the only way to manage that scenario, if at all. But the entire notion of Agile for Volunteers presumes the need for flexibility and conscientious use of volunteer time, effort, and expertise. So in other words, if you can't make it and so that makes you not want to participate on Mondays at 6 p.m., well, then we'll figure out a time that works. So yeah, there's nothing magical about Monday at 6 p.m. other than, again, a line in the sand. Although it is useful to have kind of an anchor meetup like this. Ideally, a single initiative meetup would evolve into a sort of iteration kickoff if multiple component projects and initiatives are to be running in parallel. Breakout rooms or groupings would still be essential per initiative, for example, but the conversations and general discussion would still take place according to each of the teams participating in each initiative for that iteration. Of course, as with the general notion of Agile for Volunteers, arriving at a working methodology would be the result of iteration, discussion, and maybe experimentation. So our initiative meetup is likely to always be a work in progress. So again, though, having a line in the sand, having a base of conversation or a base from which to work, to tune, to adjust, to experiment, like I said, makes sense. So Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific time will probably not move around, but it is very unlikely that there would always be one single initiative meetup that would be, I don't want to use the word required, but yeah, we can't be inflexible when it comes to people's time and trying to make progress. So small groups could meet as makes sense for them. Much more practical, probably better for everyone. And finally, the return of the monthly hackathon meetup. As I said, we used to have an in-person meetup at the Innovation Center downtown. So that was in person, and it was once a month. It was the fourth weekend. Initially, it was the second weekend. Now it's then it was the fourth weekend of the month. So Tech Alley, a rally at Tech Alley. Hey, come to our hackathon meetup next weekend. And then no one would show up. A couple times we had about 20 people. It would be hit or miss, sometimes 10, 3, and then I was there by myself. So we figured people are not interested in participating in this. We'll have to tune it up. So we've discussed the possibility of bringing back a monthly in-person meetup, though obviously this would lean heavily towards local participants, where our initial hackathon meetups were intended to be what the current attempt at initiative meetups are designed to be. Future hackathon meetups could probably be set up around specific or specifically Vegas-centric initiatives. So if there's something that is only Vegas, maybe we're doing a partnership or collaborative development with a local agency or another local nonprofit. We did have an effort temporarily that didn't really go anywhere to try to help small businesses with their websites to get online. That devolved into, once again, what's in it for me? Great. On the other hand, a virtual hackathon meetup could also work, where those who can take I see what I was going to do there. Like take the time and commit some time. So take and commit some time, if that makes sense. In my mind, it does. Take the time and then commit to participating in a virtual hackathon with others at the same time. So here it would be, if you have time to participate in this, over the course of a weekend, people that want to work on some things, they can discuss what they're working on with someone working on something else. It could be in different places, asynchronously. So over the course of a weekend or something. So you're not required to sit at your computer for 48 hours and be on a camera, but you could interact with people just as I'm describing. Nothing really magic going on, just like a study session, if you're familiar with that concept. Or co-working. You just say, hey, during this weekend, if you happen to have some time and you want to jump on to a Jitsi call, not Zoom, then come on down anytime you want. And so it's essentially making yourself available for a weekend, discontiguous time. This might work. It'd be a great time to facilitate cross-initiative conversation, to bring newcomers into initiatives to check out the what's and how's, and with a virtual gathering, focus on any or all initiatives without a local-only focus, as would be the case with in-person gatherings. So here, we wouldn't be saying, oh, we have to work on the thing that people are here in town for. It would just be, unlike the initiative meetup idea, which would be meet when you can, this would be, if you want to spend some time, it could be an hour, it could be 20 minutes, it could be 2 minutes, it could be 48 hours. If you want to be a part of a hackathon weekend, we can arrange that every month. Here again, it would take some self-starters. It wouldn't be like a hierarchy. It wouldn't be like, oh, if that one person isn't there, then forget about it. Much more communal, conversational during that time frame. And of course, we could drive the topics, or the hackathon focus would be any or all of our active initiatives. So cross-initiative conversations could take place. It'd be wonderful. And you don't all have to be in Vegas. Probably a better idea. There is an alternative path, perhaps, around facilitating other hackathons and challenges. This is part of our Challengers.Vegas initiative, which I've talked about in a previous episode, which might be based on locality, I should say. For example, the Congressional Apps Challenge is based on congressional districts and representative sponsorship per district of the event. So I live in Congressional District 4 in Nevada. So if my congressperson has elected to sponsor the Congressional Apps Challenge for that District 4, in my case, then people who are in District 4, I believe Congressional Apps Challenge is limited to 18 and under, so high school students essentially. So high school students in the district, in the Congressional District, not school district, can participate in the Congressional Apps Challenge. I'm going from memory here. I didn't review the rules, but I think it's basically that. So we could facilitate that we could provide a sort of a platform for people to combine, get some mentoring and some other inputs and insights. It would be orthogonal to our own initiative. So it wouldn't be people working on what we're working on. It would be us working with them on what they're working on, adjacent but not connected to our own efforts. This would work better, most likely, once we have some of our discovery infrastructure and outreach capability in place. So this is something to bring back off the table. Yeah, we've tabled it. So we'll bring it off the table and into discussion in the near term, especially. So the discovery infrastructure here would be the Challengers.Vegas. So challengers are the people doing the stuff. They're the people participating in the hackathon, the Congressional Apps Challenge, the NASA Space Apps Challenge, etc. So discovering that those events are even taking place, discovering who's working on them, recognizing their participation, celebrating their achievements. We've talked about this before, but that's the basic idea. So we could basically program in a monthly slot on the calendar, virtual, where we can actually have people sort of bring their project in with them, or ask, basically just a collaboratory space, free form, no specific rules. So we can either focus on what we're working on, we can focus on what we're not working on, some mixture. So this is almost certainly going to go through some iteration and discussion, and that's the way it should be. So that's on the table. We'll take it off the table and sort it out real soon now. So that's the deal. Those are our meetups. I just wanted to kind of put this out there just in case the topic comes up. It does come up occasionally. Someone will say, oh, I'm in the wrong meeting. End of the day, we are trying to engage with people so that we can answer questions about what we're working on and why and so on. So it's not really so much being a part of the wrong meeting, but we do have two separate meetings. So if we can invite people to a meeting that's more along the lines of what they're looking for, that's better. But meeting new people and having these conversations is rarely a bad thing. So don't think of it as being at the wrong meeting. Think of it as we have 2 meetings a week, and you can pick the one you want to go to and go from there. And that is where I'm going to leave this week's episode. Pretty quick. I believe it will be under 30 minutes. So that's always nice. And You can hear my voice is arguing with me today. It is the weather is getting very weird in Vegas. The actual weather, not the ecosystem weather. So that's where I'm going to leave it. And then I'm going to go have some tea. So thanks for listening as always. And we'll catch you at one of our meetups perhaps. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Bye-bye.